Hello and welcome to New Research on Building Natural Immunity with Dr. Charles Binns. I'm Ellen Teeter. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida State Oriental Medical Association, and we're very pleased you're here. We've got Dr. Binns is a BA in Political Science, master's degree in Public Sector Decision Making, and a PhD in Nutrition. He has 9 books and over 300 articles written, and has numerous wellness clients. We are very pleased that Dr. Binns is here, and I welcome you, Dr. Binns, and you're ready to start sharing your PowerPoint.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, you can share your PowerPoint and let's go.
All right. Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Ellen. I wanted to start this off, first of all, with this disclaimer that this webinar provides educational information about health and wellness related to viruses. It's not intended and should not be construed as medical advice. The information has been carefully researched for its scientific value and should be shared with a qualified medical professional before personal use. As we know, natural products such as medical foods and herbs and natural supplements may have negative reactions due to genetic predispositions, individual biochemistry, and the use of certain medications. I'd also like to ask everybody to join me in a little exercise, because this is such a confounding virus that the scientists and the doctors really don't know from day to day what it's all about and how to deal with it. And so I think we should put the power of this group to work. And I'm going to create something called the Germination Project. And I'm going to ask you to consider 4 facts as we go forward, and think about these as you see these slides, and think about what they mean to you and what it's telling you. And the first one is, this fact is from the National Cancer Institute. They did a study of 16,000 people and couldn't find one person with a healthy diet. In fact, these people range in age from 2 to 80, and in 14 categories, majority of them were deficient in 11 out of those 14 categories. So that's fact number 1. Number 2, this fact came from the Stanford University Medical School, where they did a look at adults and all the information they could gather. They found that 88% of adults had metabolic weaknesses. In other words, they were challenged. And the third one is, there's a recent study that came out showing that 4 state prisons were tested. Every prisoner was tested. And they found out that while 96% of them had the virus, that same group, 96%, they had no symptoms. And so I'd like you to ponder that for a few minutes. And then there's this latest study from China about patients that were tested after the fact. And they found that those that had the weakest symptoms, in other words, either no symptoms or very low symptoms, they all had a level of vitamin D3 at 30 nanograms per milliliter or higher. That's 98%, low or no symptoms. So anyway, ponder that as we go forward in the workshop. Maybe at the end, we'll come up with some unique analysis from the participants. So here we are. What are viruses? Small microbe parasite, basically. The most abundant non-living infectious particles on the planet. Not able to make protein like other cells are. They're totally dependent on our host cells. They only reproduce inside the host cell. A strong immune system controls reproduction, as we can find out through this workshop. A weak immune system allows millions of our cells to be replicated quickly. And each virus has a unique size and entry point, and we'll find a little bit more about that later. Viruses don't die in many scientists' and doctors' estimation. They retreat to a safe place. And this theory was shared with many functional medicine doctors, and most of them agreed that this was not something that viruses really didn't die. They just went somewhere to hide in the body that was safer. So there are dozens of viruses that have been passed on over many generations, and you should know that genetic material can be passed down through as many as 14 different generations. Most of us have viruses when we're born, and then they manifest in different ways through our experience in the environment and through the things that we do biochemically to our bodies through pollution and nutrition and other things. So you can see there's a great number of these viruses that have names like hepatitis and pneumonia, and there's measles, and now we got the COVID, and so there's all kinds of viruses with different names that attack different parts of the body. And you can see from this picture all the different parts of the body that are attacked by these viruses. The treatments for viral infections, unfortunately, while there's been many different viruses, there's only been a few treatments that have really been effective. We know that the smallpox vaccination is effective, the polio vaccination is effective, the HIV vaccination is effective, the hepatitis C medication is very effective. We don't know really from year to year whether the flu and the measles vaccinations are going to be effective or not. But right now, we can't say that they're 100% effective. It all depends, in the case of flu, what the strains are that they put into the vaccines. And from a measles point of view, there's a lot of evidence that shows that sometimes the vaccines actually cause measles, and but more than not, they'll actually prevent it. Some viral infections can cause a bacterial infection. And as we know from the science, there's things called superbugs. And these superbugs are now becoming immune to antibiotics. So if you get a viral infection that also has a bacteria infection with it, this creates a real problem. They don't have lots of good things for viruses. And now the things for bacteria are also not as good as they have been in the past. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble with our advancing here. The one that I wanted was this one. Okay, so this has to do with the transmission. There's lots of theories on how these viruses get transmitted. You can see the bats at the top, maybe eating the fruits, and the fruits being eaten by the pigs, and the pigs then being the humans consuming the pigs or touching the pigs. There's a lot of mixed evidence in this area. You've heard it all in the media, so I'm not going to try to repeat any of it. What we know is the environment has a lot to do with it. And as the environment becomes more challenged with more forests being cut down and people having to live closer to nature, we know that's pretty well one of the causes of these viruses becoming more prominent in our life. We also know that the human spread of viruses happens in different ways. For instance, we've got the skin contact with the HPV that usually is in form of warts. We've got respiration. Here we've got the cold, the flu, the measles, and the mumps. We've got the fecal or oral through polio and coxsackie and the hepatitis A, and we've got milk from breastfeeding that is also created or allows these viruses of HIV and HRKV1 and CMV to be transmitted. And then sexually, we have herpes and HIV 1 and 2 and hepatitis B. So that's generally the transmission for most of these viruses. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the preventing and treating viral disease naturally. And here are some examples. Measles, for instance, in this study by PubMed, was treated with 200,000 international units of vitamin A in children, and it was very effective. HIV, there was a study from the National Institute of Health in 2018 where when there was a vitamin D3 level of 50 to 90 nanograms per milliliter in the blood, they got a very good response to the HIV virus. Colds and flu, again, it's the vitamin D3, 90 or 50 nanograms per milliliter or higher. This was from the Federal American Science exhibit or exposition in 2012. TB and hepatitis C, again, vitamin D3, the Canadian AIDS Exchange found that it was very effective. And actually, it turns out that there was a polio treatment that came from vitamin C. This was years after Jonas Salk found the polio vaccine. But again, we see that vitamin C was able to provide a strong level of immunity for polio patients. And then viral pneumonia, also some high dose vitamin C was effective in the treatment of a viral pneumonia. And this was through the Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine. So we see there's a history, I guess this is the point, that many of these viruses have had effective treatments based on things like vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin C. And so I think that's important to note because as we go forward, we'll see that there's lots of things that can be effective in different viruses, and hopefully they'll be effective in the COVID virus as well. So what's the special case of the COVID all about? The current vaccine in the New England Journal of Medicine was only proven to be about 10% effective. And what we found out from several studies at University of Chicago and UCLA and London School of Tropical Hygiene was that less than half of these cases are actually being identified. Because as you know from the science and the media, we're not getting everybody tested. And so this is a real problem because we don't know how many people are actually affected. And Dr. Lipset from Harvard predicts that 40 to 70% of the world population will eventually become infected. We don't know whether that's going to bring immunity to people, but we know that it's probably going to take that much before we get that herd reaction where enough people are infected that they're not going to be spreading it randomly to everybody. And then in China, the first bunch of studies that came out showed that the patients that were tested found that 81% of them had mild symptoms or none, 14% had severe, and about 5% were critical. We know also now that people who have lung conditions are the most vulnerable, and smokers are turning out to be somewhat vulnerable in this regard as well. So who are the most vulnerable people? Well, as we mentioned just previously, people with respiratory illnesses like COPD and asthma and allergies, people with chronic diseases. And this has to do with the quality and the function of the white blood cells. So if you have a chronic illness and your immune system is activated, then those white blood cells are needed. And when you have a chronic disease, they're depleted. So then if you add a COVID virus on top of that, that's going to create a real serious problem. Those with a weak immune system or in poor health fall into that same category. People who live in areas with high levels of pollution or exposed to pollution in the workplace, they're also vulnerable. We've got new studies coming out on that almost every week. People who eat few vegetables, and we know that most Americans eat 2 or less vegetables a day. So people who eat less vegetables are more vulnerable to this virus. People who smoke or have smoked in the past. 20% of people smoke, but 20% of people are ex-smokers or secondhand smokers, and they're vulnerable as well because their lungs have been compromised. There's now new studies showing that the 5G radiation is implicated in people that are getting this virus. But we know that's also probably all radiation. So it's not just 5G. It's radiation from CT scans and X-rays and computers and televisions and telephones. So the radiation of any form actually depletes the immune system and creates a problem. People have fewer ACE receptors because the ACE receptors are turning out to be the connection point for this virus. And so if you have a lot of them, I think that makes you both vulnerable, but it also gives you more of the positive things that come out of the ACE2 receptor. So it's a kind of a plus and minus. People who are overweight are seriously challenged because fat cells are inflammatory. And anytime you have inflammatory influences in the body, that challenges the immune system. People who eat sugar, like candy and pastries and soda, and even fruit juices, and as many as 2 very sweet fruits a day can challenge the immune system. And we'll find out a little bit more about that when we talk about vitamin C. People who have type A blood, type O is better with a proven protection. And this is from a study in China. So the people with type A are challenged. The people with type O have a better proven protection. People who drink more than 1 alcoholic beverage a day are challenged because, again, alcohol is sugar in most instances. And again, it also challenges the liver. So no matter what form the alcohol is in, your liver is activated to detoxify the alcohol. And when that happens, then you have a compromised immune system. People who become infected after 1 or 2 years of infection from a SARS or a COVID virus, they may not have an effect after that. And so that's a serious problem. We don't know whether this is going to give us a lifetime immunity, but there's evidence to show that it could be only 1 or 2 years of immunity from these viruses that are out there and actually coming at us every year. Someone who has low antibodies in their blood, but they can still be infected. And this is a serious problem because you can have a test and it can show that your body has antibodies. But if you still have this virus in your mouth or your eyes or your throat, that won't show up on the test. And so you may think that you're free and clear, but as a matter of fact, you may not be. And the virus can then go down into the lungs and into your bloodstream, and then you become infected, thinking, well, how did that happen? I had antibodies. So be careful in that regard. So how is the COVID virus different? First of all, it's a new strain of the virus. And so we don't really have any strong memory of that in our immune system. The body counts on us having a code. Everything that happens in terms of pathogens, the body creates a code. And so when something comes into the body, we immediately have our immune system look around and see if there's a code to fix that one based on what's happened in the past. Now, it spreads more easily on surfaces than other viruses. We know that it is transmitted from animals. It's also transmitted from plants. If you're picking fruits and vegetables out in the wild, it could be there. We're not saying it's a dominant thing, but it's a possible thing because we've seen it actually transmitted from people in that way. People who are carriers and have no symptoms, they can still transmit it. And we'll find out a little bit more about that later. A lot of the evidence says that the virus can remain in the air for up to 3 hours. And that's a serious problem. And even when you're shopping and you can see that you're wearing a mask, but your eyes maybe aren't covered. And so that virus could actually get into your fluid of your eyes and cause an infection. We also know that there have been experiments where they've tried to figure out how far this virus can travel. And they found out that it can travel up to 27 feet. And in this case, it actually can be in your body for 27 days and not be detected. This virus multiplies more quickly than previous viruses like the SARS. In other words, this virus can multiply 100 times in 48 hours compared to 20 times in 48 hours for the SARS virus. So it's a much faster replicating virus than others. And the mortality, we're still not sure, but the early scientific studies in China indicated that the seasonal flu was 0.1 mortality. And now they're finding out it's probably up to about 2.0, which is a 20 times increase. That figure is going to fluctuate as we get more experience around the world. But that's the one we were initially dealt with, and we know that it's stronger. We just don't know to what degree it's stronger. And then there's this whole thing about the cytokine storm. The cytokine storm, your body reacts to viruses with a group of protectors like the T cells and the B cells and the interferon. And these cytokines, they're all classified as cytokines, they can actually overreact in your body. So this overreaction can happen in several different ways. But in this case, take a look at the healthcare workers, the young healthcare workers who've been infected, and they may have been infected 3 and 4 times over a 3 or 4 day period. What happens in that case is the body is not sure what the level of this virus really is. And so every time the virus comes back into the body, a new viral load is created, and then a new viral set point is created. And it's this viral set point that helps to determine what your body's reaction is. If it's too high, then these cytokines will overreact and go flooding into your lungs because they've become out of balance. There's a balancing system here where the body is balanced with these cytokines and oxygen in your body, superoxide dismutase, superoxide, and glutathione. These are oxygen generating molecules. But if your body gets out of balance because of this storm, because of this flood of these cytokines, then it can overwhelm that balancing process. So this is a real problem because once that flood happens, then you've got more inflammation in the lungs, you've got more fluid being created, and then you've got the inability of the lungs to make oxygen or to transmit that oxygen to other organs. This is why we're finding an increasing amount of evidence to show that there's heart problems, there's kidney problems, there's liver problems, because these organs can be damaged. They're the ones who also have the highest levels of the ACE2 receptors. And so this is a double challenge. You've not only got these receptors there that can infect this person, you also got this decreased lung capacity. And so it's a combination of those two things, we think, that is causing most of the problem in these young and supposedly healthy healthcare workers. So let's talk about how there's this possibility to balance this cytokine storm, because there's a new molecule out. That's not totally new, but the evidence on it is starting to come out a lot more vigorously now than it has in the past. This molecule, this molecular hydrogen, it's the smallest molecule in the universe. It's so small that it can actually get into any cell without a transport agent. It has very strong antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. And we know now that if there's H2 put into the body, either through an IV or through water, this is going to help to balance that cytokine storm. It's called homeostasis. And this allows the body to say, wait a minute, we've got extra oxygen here. We don't have to overreact with these cytokines. So its size allows it to penetrate the cells. As I said before, it doesn't need a transport agent like a lot of molecules do. And so we're really counting on things like molecular hydrogen to balance out this cytokine storm, prevent it from happening, and prevent it from getting into the lungs where it can do real damage. And this is where you've got this nitric oxide and the superoxide that are balanced and improved and increased with this molecular hydrogen. It's this imbalance, this molecular hydrogen steps in to reestablish that balance, that homeostasis. Now, we can add H2 tablets to the water, and we also have a way to get doctors to do this with infusions of H2 with a saline infusion, and this works in a clinical setting. But if you're not in a clinical setting, then it's the tablets in water that will help to do that. It also helps to repair damaged cells. in many organs. So this is a very powerful molecule, and this is very easy to find. It's on a lot of websites, and it's on our website as well. So the World Health Organization reports the COVID vaccine may be 18 months away. And even at that, there's no evidence that it's going to be able to be beneficial to 100% of the population. We know from past history that these vaccines are usually about 10 to 40% effective at the most. And a special group of antibodies are being tested now, and we have one of the first antibody tests on our site. And we also are thankful that DHA Labs, sort of the co-sponsor of this workshop, has allowed us to include that test on our site. And so you can order that through our site, and you can find out whether you have the antibodies or not. But remember, it's not 100% effective, because those antibodies still could be, that virus still could be in your lung, in your eyes, in your nose, and your throat, and not be covered with a blood test. So that's something you really have to be considered about, but at least you'll know that it's not in your blood at that time. The virus can be transmitted in many different ways. You've heard about them all. This is just a graphic depiction of how it can happen. That's why we're not shaking hands anymore, and it's why we're wearing masks, because we need to try to restrict the transmission as much as possible. There's actually mixed reports on the masks. Some of the scientists are saying that masks actually impede the production of oxygen in the body. And so I would say, if you're going to use a mask, use it minimally, only when absolutely necessary. Or for people in the workplace who have to use them, it's unfortunate. I would say have a very high quality mask, and make sure you take a break every once in a while and take it off so you can reoxygenate your body. So how does this virus work? Well, as we talked about before, it enters the cell releasing RNA, and then the virus RNA invades the cell nucleus and takes it over. And then the viral RNA uses the host cell to replicate their RNA. And then the virus particles are released, and sometimes destroying the cell in the process, but a lot of times just promulgating it or multiplying it in the body as it goes throughout the body wherever it can. And we talked before about every virus having its own key, lock and key. This was just one example of how these locks and keys on the cells work. And of course, this can be the same kind of lock and key relationship with the ACE2 receptor. The lung cells become inflamed as the immune response to produce the T and B cells, the interferon and glutathione, are challenged. And this response is too extreme in many cases, such as the coronavirus. And again, as I said before, this floods the lungs and destroys the tissues or prevents the oxygen production in the lungs. Pneumonia may develop, and oxygen is restricted to the kidneys and the liver and the heart and the other organs I spoke about before. And then you end up with the organ failure, which causes a fatal reaction. And this, again, is an explanation for, I think, how these young, healthy healthcare workers are becoming infected multiple times. And you know that these symptoms really don't occur usually until about the 4th day. And so there's lots of opportunities for the virus to get into the body before these symptoms actually materialize. And here's a little bit of this evidence that we spoke about before, about it being impacting the heart, the blood vessels, the kidneys, the brain, the lungs, and the intestines. And again, the blood vessels are the ones that are kind of like the silent killer, because you can have a person who is asymptomatic, but now we have some science showing that X-rays and other testing devices have found people with damaged lungs and also damage in their veins, even though in their blood vessels, even though they haven't had any symptoms. And so that's very problematic. And I think we need to pay a lot more attention to that in the future. This could be a healthcare crisis, just kind of in the waiting, because we really haven't figured out how much damage is being done, how much of it will be able to be repaired by the body. So this is something we have to ponder and think about. So this ACE receptor is an interesting thing. In one study, 95% of asymptomatic patients actually experienced some cellular damage from the ACE2 receptors. It's like a condition where all of these ACE2 ACE receptors are in these different organs, and the damage can be almost anywhere. But here you look at the irregular blood clotting. It happened in 31% of patients. The heart damage in one study was somewhere between 12 and 19% of patients. And kidney damage in one study was up to 36% of patients. So this tissue in the COVID-19 lungs actually has 900% more damage than it's shown in a seasonal flu lung. So they actually did a comparison of these two lungs in someone who had the virus and someone who only had the seasonal flu. And the COVID virus, 900% more damage than in the seasonal flu lung. These are just disturbing statistics and facts. And these are the ones I wanted you to ponder as we went through this presentation based on the four facts that I set out at the beginning. The COVID-19 also impacts hormone levels, and it's been found in sperm. And so it pretty well gets into every part of the body. So nutrition really plays an important role in this, in my estimation. I think poor nutrition is the #1 cause of most illnesses, and also the cause of a weak immune system. People with lung issues and other chronic conditions are of course vulnerable and have weakened immune systems. But when you're trying to understand why nutrition is such an important factor and why so many people are asymptomatic, the work of Bruce Ames is really important in that regard. Dr. Ames came up with a theory that showed that the first nutrition that your body actually consumes is used for certain things like reproduction and like dealing with pathogens. So if you eat a couple of vegetables, those things are going to be covered first. Because you have to have survival. That's what this whole theory is about. Survival is important. So if you have some nutrition in your body, you're going to be able to reproduce and you're going to be able to take care of these pathogens. If you're in the second level, that has to do with metabolic functions like creating hormones and neurotransmitters. If you have enough nutrition left over after that, then the third category is treating chronic illnesses and preventing aging. This is extremely important because it's my contention that a vast majority of people do not have enough nutrition to satisfy level 3 of Dr. Ames' theory on nutrition. And this is what's causing such a big increase in chronic illness. In fact, chronic illness increase has been 700% over the last 60 years. And I think this is one of the main problems. People are not eating enough fruits and vegetables, fiber, nuts and seeds, and good protein. And so this, I think, is the reason why we have this big gap between how many people are asymptomatic and how many people have chronic illnesses. Over 70% of people have one or more chronic illnesses now. This is serious. And again, as I said, it was only 10% about 60 years ago. And here's that study from the National Cancer Institute that I mentioned earlier, where 16,000 people, they couldn't find one person with a healthy diet. And people need actually, if you're going to actually have a good immune system and resist all these chronic illnesses, you need 7 to 9 helpings of fruits and vegetables a day, with the dominance being on vegetables. Most people aren't willing to do that. So for a lot of our clients, we recommend a good green powdered drink. Green powdered drink can actually give you 7 to 9 helpings of fruits and vegetables, mostly vegetables, in one scoop. And so if people include that in their shake or their daily drink of some kind, this is going to be a tremendous improvement in your immune system and your protection against chronic illness. The other thing that we don't really think and talk about a lot is that as we age, certain things happen to our body that are not really good for us in the long term because we're programmed to die. And so by the time you're 40, your body's making probably about 40% less digestive enzymes than it did when you were 20. It's making less stomach acid, it's making less probiotics, it's making less glutathione and superoxide dismutase. And so these are all processes that were hardwired in our genetic code to happen as we age. Well, as soon as I learned about that, you know what I did as a good hypochondriac. I went immediately to the store and I bought everything that said it was going to decline. I'd already passed the age of 40, so to me, it was a no-brainer. I had to go and get these things and start taking them right away. And I've been recommending this to my clients for the last 20 or 25 years. So what are some of the other unique virus and COVID factoids? The virus usually follows a three-step process in the body, from the mouth and throat to the blood and to the lungs. As the virus moves through the blood, it measures the viral load and then establishes a viral set point. It usually takes 4 days before symptoms begin. A person can be infected multiple times. We talked about that, and that's the viral load and the viral set point that determines the strength of the response. The body can take from 9 to 14 days to actually analyze the virus and create an antibody. This is a gap. When you have only 4 days until symptoms happen, and then you've got 9 to 14 days sometimes for the body actually to analyze it and figure out what to do with it, there's a tremendous gap there of 5 to 10 days where the body doesn't know what to do and you need some help. That's my theory of this. The body needs some help while it's trying to figure out what to do with it. So weakening immunity creates the cytokine storm, that's the overreaction, and the antibodies may only last for about 2 to 3 months, or it could be forever, it could be a couple of years, we're not sure. A person could be reinfected after that. I mean, we just don't know. For instance, the chickenpox antibodies last a lifetime. The whooping cough lasts 20 years. The H1N1 lasts about 10 years. And the common cold about 2 months. And the SARS and COVID so far, about 2 to 3 years. So you can see this whole thing about antibodies is all over the place. And we just don't know what the COVID is all about in this regard. So build a healthy immune system. Eat the Mediterranean plant-based diet with 7 to 9 helpings of fruits and vegetables. Avoid sugar and salt. Add supplements like a multiple vitamin, vitamin C, vitamin D3, digestive enzymes before cooked meals especially, magnesium, vitamin B complex, zinc, and silver. We'll talk about silver a little bit later. Create more white blood cells with vitamin A and vitamin E and B6 and astragalus. These actually multiply the number of white blood cells that your body makes. Avoid toxins and detoxify periodically. Doctors that say your body has a strong enough detoxification system are dead wrong. And I'm sorry, that's not a pun, it's just a fact. Exercise daily, aerobic and strength and flexibility. Avoid stress with things like yoga and meditation. Try to get at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. And also it's good to think about a response as soon as the symptoms start. And so in our house and in the people that I coach, we have a rotation system where we say anybody that has any symptoms, start with a higher dose of vitamin D, an hour later use a higher dose of vitamin C, then use some silver, and then the next hour use some olive leaf extract. And you do that every hour, and you do that until the symptoms stop. And then for me, a hypochondriac, I continue almost the same routine for another day, just in case, because we know viruses can come back. Viruses are very famous for suppressing the symptoms and then coming back a day later. And we also are able, for the first time that I know of, to be able to balance or to be able to measure the immune system. And so one of the things that we've developed is a test where you can actually measure the immune system. And things that we're measuring are omega-3/6 ratio, vitamin D3, vitamin C, coenzyme Q10, C-reactive protein, the 8-OHGD test. This is a test that determines how much DNA damage are in your cells. The GGT test is a test of your liver function, which is, we know, the most important detoxification organ in your body. We also like the glycomark glucose test because it actually tells you what the overall story is for sugar in your body, not just in your fasting, but also in your post-meal glucose, which is really critical. We also have in this the lymphocytes test. This is the white blood cell test. And we also include as number 10, the homocysteine test. This is the methylation test. This is important because B6 and B12 and folic acid are the methylators that break down amino acids into hormones and neurotransmitters. If you have if you have high homocysteine, this is also a sign of inflammation. So this panel is unique in what it measures. The cost is pretty high because these tests are expensive, $314. But the interesting thing is anybody ordering this test, we're going to give you how to balance these things. It's kind of a physiological nutrition balancing exercise. If you're out of balance, we give you the nutritional program in each case for how you can get back in balance with these particular immune measurement items. For vitamin C and D and nanoparticle silver, these are what I call the big three solutions to viral infections. Vitamin C is an antiviral. It has an extra electron that helps to neutralize pathogens that are missing an electron. Vitamin C helps the body to make glutathione, which is a very strong antioxidant. Our body only makes two antioxidants naturally, glutathione and superoxide dismutase. So vitamin C, it helps to make the glutathione, but it helps as an antioxidant on its own and an antiviral on its own. Vitamin C assists in making antiviral, the cytokine interferon. And so this is critical to fighting this virus. Prevention doses can be up to 5,000 milligrams a day, and treatment doses up to 50,000 milligrams a day. And these are from scientists other than me. These are from doctors and scientists that have been studying this for a long time. And this is the doses that they found to be effective in these situations. This is the thing that I talked about before about the white blood cells. White blood cells are a vital part of the immune response. To fight viruses, the white blood cells need about 50 times the higher level of vitamin C than they would normally need. Unfortunately, sugar has a molecular structure that's kind of similar to vitamin C. And so if you don't have enough vitamin C in your body, sugar will gladly fill those white blood cells up. And it might look like your body has a strong immune system with healthy white blood cells, but actually you could have an immune strength reduction of about 75%. So eat a very low sugar diet and higher doses of vitamin C to correct this. Intravenous C is the best. We know this from people who have had the virus and been treated in their doctor's office or in the hospital in China. They're actually recommending this now based on some studies that were done on COVID patients. Again, the high dose for prevention is 5 to 10,000. But intravenous, if you have the virus and it's causing serious symptoms, try to find a doctor, a functional medicine doctor that will give you intravenous as quickly as possible. That will be a very, very strong reaction to this virus. In the vitamin C study world, there's 256 different references in this particular study. And it says, furthermore, supplementation with vitamin C appears to be able to both prevent and treat respiratory and systemic infections. So anybody that says there's not science behind this really hasn't taken the time to look at the science, because there are 256 references in this one study alone. So how to optimize your vitamin C levels? Take 500 milligrams of vitamin C every 4 hours, because vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin and it will leave your body within 4 hours. So if you want to take 2,000 a day in the morning and you think that's going to do the job for you, you're probably wrong. You're going to waste 1,500 milligrams. So taking it split doses is really important. Make sure you take a vitamin C that has bioflavonoids in it, because this is how C occurs in fruit. There's bioflavonoids, and we all know that vitamin C and other nutrients like to be with the things that are called cofactors. And so these bioflavonoids are cofactors. They're very important. So any vitamin C that you buy, try to make sure it has enough bioflavonoids in it. Try to take your vitamin C with fruits and vegetables as well, because they're even more cofactors than the bioflavonoids. So you take it with a fruit or a vegetable, you're increasing the effectiveness of the vitamin C. Vitamin C intake of the white blood cells is impeded because of the sugar thing that we mentioned. Increased supplement of vitamin C intake gradually, because you could have bowel intolerance. So if you're taking 500 or you're taking 1,000, don't jump to 5,000, don't jump to 10,000. Titrate up, go from 1,000 to 2, and then a couple of days later go to 3, a couple of days later go to 4,000. So you want to gradually increase it so you don't put a really big challenge on your bowels too quickly. Do not try to get your vitamin C from orange juice. I had a reporter from one of the national networks say to me, "Oh, I couldn't find vitamin C in the store, so I just bought a bunch of apples or oranges." And I said, "Well, that's really not the thing to do. There's too much sugar in oranges and not enough vitamin C. And so you're actually going to do more harm than good by eating too many oranges to try to get your vitamin C." Also, you should know that vitamin C is actually recycled with vitamin E and alpha lipoic acid. So if you have those two things in your repertoire of supplements, you're actually recycling your vitamin C for increased use. And again, all vitamin C supplements are not equal. I've given you some of the distinction here. One of the things you probably can use as a guide that's very simple: if it's very cheap and expensive vitamin C, it's probably not an effective vitamin C. It has to be tailored and structured properly, and that means it takes a little more time to actually develop. And there's actually, try to buy vitamin C from a site where they actually had done their own research. That also helps. Let's talk about vitamin D3 for a minute. This is a new study that just came out of China. That's the one I talked about before, where the people that had at least 30 nanograms per milliliter of vitamin D in their body had a 98% reduction in symptoms. They were either no or low symptoms. We also know that the NIH and the Mayo Clinic has supported vitamin D3 for preventing viral infections. There's actually 34,000 studies on vitamin D3. So if anybody says to you, well, there's not a lot of science behind these vitamins, there's a tremendous amount of science. In fact, there's no other prescription drug or natural treatment that's been better at preventing cancer and actually in many cases treating cancer as well. We have evidence from a half a dozen of the world's most famous cancer clinics showing that vitamin D3 was the most effective thing in preventing it and treating it. Vitamin D controls over 2,000 genes that are related to chronic illness. So again, vitamin D3 is very powerful. We get it from the sun. We get it from omega-rich fish and from supplements. We think, or a lot of scientists and doctors think, that 50 to 90 nanograms per day in the blood is actually the ideal dose. If you went into the sun and you actually stayed in the sun for about 20 minutes till your skin was pink, and you had about 40% of your body exposed, you'd probably get up to 20,000 international units of vitamin D3. If you add sunscreen to that, you've probably eliminated all that, because sunscreen is going to prevent the ultraviolet rays from getting to the skin, and inside and deeper into the skin is where cholesterol resides. And it's that ultraviolet light hitting the skin, activating the cholesterol that now produces the vitamin D3 in your body. The vitamin D3 controls the on and off switches in your genes and your cells, and 80% of the genetic material in your body is on and off switches. 80% of all genetic material in your body is on and off switches. Every prescription medication only deals with one on and off switch. Vitamin D3 deals with over 2,000. Vitamin D3 helps to make an antibody known as cathelicidin that kills viruses. And Dr. Cannell recommends 50,000 international units daily for 5 days as a treatment dose. The prevention dose he's recommending is 5 to 10,000 international units daily. That's just for maintenance. So if blood levels are less than 50 nanograms per milliliter, it's interesting. Here's a study from the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health concluded that those with higher levels of vitamin D were lowered their risk of upper respiratory infections compared to those with lower doses. So the higher doses were better than the people with the lower doses in their blood. In another study from 2017 at the British Medical Journal, they looked at studies with 11,323 participants, basically the same conclusion. In fact, those who had levels that were less than 10 nanograms per milliliter, when they supplemented, they were able to get an increased of 70% decreased infection rate because of the supplementation that was added. And in a double-blind placebo-controlled study, the treatment group consumed 2,000 international units of vitamin D3 during the cold and flu season, while the control group consumed a placebo. The vitamin D3 group had a 58% reduced risk of flu. And you can see for every one of these, there's a scientific reference. And in the handout that's available on our website, you can go and download that handout and get all the scientific references. The third one that we'd like to cover is the silver. This is the nanoparticle colloidal silver. The first studies were done at UCLA back in 1986. They were just using colloidal silver. They tested 650 pathogens, and in minutes, somewhere between 2 to 9 minutes, they were all neutralized. The first study for nanoparticle silver was done at the University of Texas in 2005, and that silver was 100% effective against the HIV-1 virus in 3 hours. Silver cuts off the viral cell oxygen supply and stops the viral reproduction of the DNA from multiplying. No studies have completed on the coronavirus, but silver has been known to be effective in many of these viral infections and has been used down through history for thousands of years as an antibiotic and an antiviral. Silver reduces silver study results. These are just some of the additional results from all the things that silver has been able to do over the years and some of the references. I think because of time, we'll skip this. It's one of those things that explains a little bit how silver works, but just knowing that it cuts off the oxygen and damages the DNA of the cell, of the viral cell, that's the main thing we have to consider here. There are other things that also help to reduce inflammation in the lungs. Curcumin has a very good study backing reduction of inflammation in the lungs. Bromelain is also effective in reducing inflammation in the lungs and having an antimicrobial effect. Quercetin is also very good for the lungs and has anti-inflammatory activity. And so we know that these things work. And interestingly enough, these have all been converted into IV treatments by a doctor in Florida, Dr. Daniel Thomas. And so you can take it supplementally, but you can also get it in a stronger dose through IVs if you go to the right doctor. There's other nutrients that provide antiviral, have antiviral properties. Zinc is extremely strong. I would put it in there probably fourth after vitamins D, C, and silver. Zinc is right up there at the top of the list. Alpha lipoic acid has some science behind it. Vitamin A has some science. We saw that with the children's study before. Lauricidin is another one that has a lot of science behind it. And this is a product that is very good at preventing the binding of the viral proteins to the host cell membrane. Olive leaf extract is extremely effective. The International Journal of Molecular Science has a really good study on it, and you can see that it has a lot of great properties to help with viral replication, and it interferes with the production of the proteins that it needs. Pectosol C is an extremely strong nutrient. This is a modified citrus pectin that actually has shown the ability to actually prevent cancer and actually stop the spread of cancer and kill cancer cells. But it also can stop the cytokine storm and help the immune system to be boosted. So we put Pectosol C very, very high on the list. Lots of clinical studies on Pectosol C now, and that's that modified citrus pectin. So what are some of the foods that are great? Wild blueberries, pomegranates, sweet potatoes, coconut oil, sprouts and parsley, cilantro, garlic, ginger, turmeric, red clover, fennel, and kale. These are all foods that have very good antiviral capabilities. So what are some of the food supplement guidelines? The first line of defense is in the throat. This is where the first symptoms usually occur. And my recommendation is to use zinc and vitamin C and zinc and silver lozenges. You then should add the protocol that was mentioned earlier with the vitamin C and D and zinc on an hourly basis in order to prevent it from getting anywhere else into your lungs. With, again, the Mediterranean diet with fruits and vegetables and salmon and sardines and eggs and cod liver oil. Make sure you chew your food effectively 20 to 30 times in order to make particles smaller and release the amylase enzymes for assimilation. And as we age, remember I told you some of these things like enzymes and stomach acid and probiotics and glutathione are decline as we age. So you should make sure if you want to be very careful to take supplemental versions of those to help improve your body's efficiency and its immune response. Go very low on the sugar. We know that it can suppress your immune system by up to 75%. And again, the best way to use these supplements, in my opinion, is to alternate them on an hourly basis so that you confuse the body but not the immune system. You make it stronger. This is some of the prescription medications that have been used by Dr. Thomas. He does like the hydroxy chloroquine combined with zinc. He has that as a possible use, but he also likes these other three, the nitazoxanide, the evermeticide, the remdesivir. And so there's science behind these, not for the COVID, but for other viruses, just like the natural stuff. But he also uses the molecular hydrogen, the intravenous C, the intravenous curcumin. And so he's using a whole range of natural and prescription medications in his practice, depending on what the situation is. He's treating mostly stage 4 cancer patients. And so he really has to be at the top of his game to treat patients that are challenged so significantly. In summary, eat a plant-based Mediterranean diet, 7 to 9 helping the vegetables and fruits a day. A powdered drink wouldn't hurt at all. Low sugar, low salt. Add these supplements that we talked about, A, C, B, D, vitamin E, zinc, omega oils, magnesium, astragalus, lauricidin, olive leaf extract. Take a digestive enzyme before cooked meals and probiotics in the morning before you eat. Avoid toxins and detoxify once or twice a year. A good program is from Metagenics called Clear Change. I like that program a lot. It has the science behind it. A lot of detoxification programs don't. Exercise 30 to 60 minutes every day. Use the aerobic, the strength, and the flexibility. But when you get the virus, you want to cut back on the exercise a little bit because you don't want to use up your immune system and your energy too much. So this is for when you want to prevent it, is when you do the exercise 30 minutes every day, 30 to 60 minutes every day. Manage stress with yoga and meditation and music, and there's lots of other ways you can do that too. Every person has their own technique for this. Wash your hands frequently with soap and warm water. Clean your house with a product called Pure Green 24. It's the safest and most effective product. You can find it at Whole Foods and other good health food stores. Practice social distancing and avoid touching your face. Use anti-particle vitamin C orally or in a gel form for your hands. And here are some of the nutrients and blood tests that we have access to on our website. We have the nanoparticle colloidal silver on our site. We have the ultra-potent vitamin C on our site. We have the molecular hydrogen on our site. We have 5 different tests, wellness blood tests starting at $125 for a wellness test that has a lot of these different good advanced warning system tests in it. And there's lots of other things on the site as well. And so with that, I would like to close it out and ask Elaine to take over and answer any questions people have. And I think Daniel Hansen also has a few words he'd like to say on behalf of DHA.
Thank you, Dr. Binns. Daniel's was not going to be here tonight. He decided he would not do that tonight, but we can have him another time to talk about the lab tests at DHA. FASOMA members he is an affiliate with FASOMA, and we do have access to sign up and use his the blood work at DHA as well. If we have some questions, we have a Q&A box at the bottom. If people want to put questions in there. I have a question just to talk about vitamin D and A are both vitamins that you can overdose on. If you could talk a little about the dosing of those and what's a dangerous level that you're thinking of, or is that thinking changed?
Well, no, I think you're absolutely right. That's why we really recommend that people have the test first to see what their levels are. So the vitamin D3 test is in all of our panels, in all of our blood tests. And what happens there is if you're below 50 nanograms per milliliter, then it's recommended, the doctor will probably recommend that you have a low dose of vitamin D3 in order to bring it up a little bit. If you have very low levels, say below 30 nanograms per milliliter, then the doctor's going to probably recommend a higher dose. It takes a long time for vitamin D3 to increase dramatically in the body. And so after 6 months or a year, get another blood test and find out what the levels are. And then you can decide whether to go to a lower maintenance dose or not. Some people have genetic challenges, and so they may have a very difficult time assimilating, but mainly it's doing the test. And in terms of vitamin A, we recommend no more than 10,000 international units of vitamin A every other day because it is fat soluble and it will accumulate in the body. We also recommend sometimes that people just use beta carotene. There's a form of vitamin A that doesn't accumulate in the body, and that's the beta carotene. So a lot of times we're recommending that people alternate. They take beta carotene most of the time because the body will discard whatever it doesn't need. And then we recommend a couple of days a week to take maybe 5,000 international units of A because vitamin A in that form is stronger than the beta carotene.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions out there? There is a Q&A box on your screen. It says Q&A and has some little bubbles over it, or if you want to put something in the chat. If everybody could go to the chat, I've put a survey in. If you all can click on that and just answer some quick questions, that would be wonderful to let us know how we did. There's just so much information here. Dr. Binns, could you talk a little more about some of the supplements that are antiviral but also anti-cancer? There was a citrus one or one that sounds sort of citrusy. Is that the pectin?
Oh, the pectisol. Yeah, the pectisol is an extremely beneficial and powerful nutrient. Modified citrus pectin has been shown to not only prevent cancer and prevent the spread of cancer and kill cancer cells, it's also effective in helping with heart disease. It's been shown to reduce cholesterol levels in the body, to help to remove plaque from the body, and to help to soften the arteries and the blood vessels in the body from the hardening that often happens. And so when you have these kinds of significant changes, you can actually measure whether you're in need of this particular supplement with a blood test called the galactin-3. And we include the galactin-3 in our immune test and in our cancer tests. And so when galactin-3 levels are above 17, this is considered to be dangerous because this pectin is really positive at the beginning of our lives, but as we age, it starts to accumulate and starts to cause fibrosis and cause damage to our cells. And so if you start to get above 17 on the galactin-3 scale, that's when you probably want to get serious about using something like Pectisol 3 to bring it to, Pectisol C to bring it down. In my own case, I was at about 15.7, which is not very high, but I wanted it to be lower, so I started to take the Pectisol. I got it down to 13.7. Correspondingly, I ended up with the lowest cholesterol levels that I've had in 30 years. And correspondingly, I got the lowest C-reactive protein levels, inflammation levels that I've had in years. So in my own personal case, I know that it worked, and that's verified in the scientific studies as well.
We do have a question from Rosanna Bowman. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Do you have a step-by-step guiding protocols that we should follow in our way to better health? Do you have one of your books? Does one of your books do that? You have
Yes, there's a book on the site called Health in Your Pocket, and it's a 3.5 by 5.5 inch book with about 200 pages of all the best science that I could find for 30 chronic illnesses, including cancer and depression and arthritis and diabetes. And in the book, we have 100 pages dedicated to prevention, and we have the second 100 pages dedicated to a 2 or 3 page protocol for each of those 30 chronic illnesses, which says basically, here's how you got this. These are the symptoms. These are the causes. Here's the foods that you should eat. Here's the foods you shouldn't eat. And here's the supplements that we know from science will actually work. And so, yeah, that's probably a pretty good guideline. But, you know, I think that the 90% or 80% at least of all the protocols for these chronic illnesses start with the same types of things. And that is you need to eat a better diet. The Mediterranean diet has the most science behind it, sort of a plant-based Mediterranean diet. And then we know that there's actually very little opportunity for anybody to get all the nutrients they need from food alone. I challenge doctors and scientists to show me the study where anybody can actually survive and be successful on a diet without nutritional supplements in this day and age, with all the toxic challenges and all the other things that are going on. Living to the age of 80 is not really outstanding. Your body's designed to live to 120. And a lot of people in Okinawa live past 100. In fact, there's 400% more people live over the age of 100 in Okinawa than live over 100 in the United States. It's basically because they eat more fruits and vegetables. They eat a big variety of foods instead of eating 10 or 15 different foods during the week. And so we know there are proven protocols to prevent disease. And we also know that in functional medicine, there's now a protocol for every chronic disease that says basically 80% of disease is preventable, but we only spend 5% of every dollar on healthcare on prevention. And that's where we need to flip that equation and get people getting more money spent on prevention.
great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Benz, for taking time out of your schedule to visit with us and educate us. If there's no more questions, I'm going to say thank you and good night.
Well, remember, Ellen, just quickly, they can go and get the handout at www.drcharlesbenz.com. It's free. So www.drcharlesbenz.com. It's free. It's on the homepage. And it's a PDF, and they can download that, and they're going to get a lot more details than they even got from this workshop. And also, there's lots of articles there, and there's lots of things about the tests and the supplements that we discussed.
Is that the, where is it on your website? I'll stick it in. I have your website. Where is the free handout?
Well, it should be there prominently on the homepage. That's where my webmaster said she was going to put it.
Download the webinar virus protection.
Yes, it could be there too.
I'll put the link in the Q&A for people. And please remember, I stuck a seminar, a question in there, a question and answer about the seminar if people could take it. So I'll leave those up for a few more minutes. Any more questions? No questions. All right. I will put these links on the FOSOMA homepage as well after the video gets uploaded. It'll take about, probably be tomorrow morning before I get this uploaded, but I will. So thank you again, and good night.
Thank you, Ellen.